Senate Majority Leader Reid went nuclear today. The Democrats threw out a key rule that's been in place in the Senate for more than 2 centuries. Senator Reid said the reason for voting out the filibuster on presidential nominations, with the exception of Supreme Court justices, is to remedy obstructionism. But with this president and administration caught now in a web of historic lies and Mr. Obama in a ratings freefall, today's filibuster-busting vote may be as much about changing the subject and diverting media attention. I'm Lou Dobbs. Good evening, everybody. Senate Majority Leader Reid going nuclear today. The upper chamber voting to eliminate the 60-vote threshold for presidential nominees. And for a day at least, President Obama had a bright, shiny distraction to keep the national media from the train wreck that is Obamacare and the pile of White House lies that seems to grow with each passing day. The biggest of those lies, quite possibly the nearly 40 times he said, quote, "If you like your health insurance, you can keep it, period." But there are so many lies to consider, and that sets the Obama White House apart from his predecessors. Their lies were considered in many cases profound, but certainly fewer in number. President George W. Bush invaded Iraq to destroy Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, weapons that were never found. President Clinton once famously said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," before ultimately he was forced to admit that he did. President George H.W. Bush told America to read his lips. He promised no new taxes before raising several taxes as part of a 1990 budget agreement. President Obama's list, much longer. He was dishonest about keeping your health care, about keeping your doctor, about rates going down, about the cause of the Benghazi terrorist attack, and claimed to know nothing about scandals that range from the IRS targeting of conservatives to the NSA spying on world leaders, to the Justice Department snooping on reporters. Mr. Obama today wasted no time getting in front of the cameras, trying to use the Senate's nuclear partisan vote to eliminate the filibuster from presidential nominations, and of course to help distract the national media from so many more urgent and important matters. Fox News Chief White House Correspondent Ed Henry has our report.
Barely an hour after President Obama had liberal pundits over for a long, off-the-record session to help shore up his base after weeks of pounding over health care, he came out whole hog for a tactical step that also rallies his partisan allies.
So, I support the step a majority of senators today took to change the way that Washington is doing business.
The president backing the extraordinary step of Democrats changing Senate rules to run roughshod over Republican attempts to block some of his nominees, including judicial picks who could hold sway over major regulatory matters, including how health care gets implemented.
The gears of government have to work, and the step that the majority of senators took today, I think, will help make those gears work just a little bit better.
The shift in focus to the so-called nuclear option also enables the president to try and change the subject from the broken gears over at healthcare.gov, which have been sinking his poll numbers, even as aides tried to downplay the significance of bringing in liberal pundits to try and right the ship.
The president's not focused on politics right now. What the president is focused on is implementing the Affordable Care Act in a way that maximizes the benefits of the law for millions of people all across the country.
Except earlier this week, the president himself framed this as a political campaign, as he urged his liberal supporters at Organizing for Action to beat back Republican attempts to dismantle the law.
So I've run my last political campaign, but I've got one more campaign in me, and that's making sure that this law works. And we're not backing off one bit.
Today, the president was reflective about the war over nominations.
I realize that neither party has been blameless for these tactics. They've developed over years, and it seems as if they've continually escalated.
In fact, those tactics were developed in part by then-Senator Obama in 2005, who threatened to block all of then-President Bush's environmental nominations until he got his way on a lead paint policy. And he lashed out at Republican Mitch McConnell's 2005 threats to use the nuclear option against Democrats.
I sense that talk of the nuclear option is more about power than about fairness. I believe some of my colleagues propose this rules change because they can get away with it rather than because they know it's good for our democracy.
Though aides now insist the president's change of heart is not hypocritical.
Then Senator Obama would argue that it was a substantive position, but he was obstructing nominees. What's different now?
I think what's different is I didn't work for Senator Obama at the time, and I'm not familiar with the specific instance that you've cited. I do think the president was pretty forthcoming about the fact that this is a problem that has existed for a while, and neither side is blameless.
A problem for the president is that he may have poked Republicans in the eye just as he gets ready for another budget battle and a possible showdown over the debt ceiling. Lou?
Ed, thank you very much, Ed Henry. The so-called nuclear option reduces the Republican minority to spectator status on all of the president's executive nominations, save for the Supreme Court justices. All because politically weakened Democrats will never again be able to ram legislation down the throats of the American people, not after the spectacular failure of Obamacare and so many promises broken by this president. They're still intent on ramming some of the president's nominations through the Senate, and now can do so. Fox News Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel with our report.
Lou, Republican leaders are accusing Democrats of a power grab and threatening that they will live to regret this bold move.
Complaining of gridlock, Senate Democrats changed the rules, eliminating filibusters for most presidential nominations. The vote was 52-48, mostly along party lines, and scraps nearly 225 years of precedent in the body known for deliberation.
The change we propose today would ensure executive and judicial nominations an up or down vote on confirmation. Yes, no. The rule change will make cloture for all nominations other than the Supreme Court, a majority threshold vote.
3 Democrats, Carl Levin, Joe Manchin, and Mark Pryor, voted with the GOP in opposition. Republican leader Mitch McConnell accused Reid of going nuclear to try and change the subject from Obamacare.
Millions of Americans are hurting because of a law Washington Democrats forced upon them. And what do they do about it? They cook up some fake fight over judges.
McConnell mocked Reid with another Obamacare reference.
He may just as well have said, if you like the rules of the Senate, you can keep them.
Later, a top Democrat fired back.
Mitch McConnell says we've tried to change the subject. I beg to differ. He doesn't want to address the filibusters. He doesn't want to address the rules changes, so 3/4 of his speech is dedicated to Obamacare. We are not changing the subject today. He is.
In the White House briefing room, President Obama expressed support.
Today's pattern of obstruction, it just isn't normal. It's not what our founders envisioned. A deliberate and determined effort to obstruct everything, no matter what the merits, just to refight the results of an election, is not normal.
But prominent Democrats didn't like the idea when it was threatened in 2005 when they were in the minority.
This nuclear option is ultimately an example of the arrogance of power.
The filibuster is far from a procedural gimmick. It's part of the fabric of this institution we call the Senate.
Today, Tennessee Republican Lamar Alexander sounded an alarm.
This is the most important and most dangerous restructuring of Senate rules since Thomas Jefferson wrote them at the beginning of our country. It's really not about the filibuster. It's another raw exercise of political power to permit the majority to do anything it wants whenever it wants to do it. It is Obamacare 2 in that sense.
Reid was asked if this will come back to bite him when Democrats are in the minority.
No, what I said on the floor, what I've told each of you, this is the way it has to be. The Senate has changed. The Senate has changed. Look what's happened.
This comes as the Senate is trying to finish up the defense authorization bill and as lawmakers are trying to hammer out a budget agreement. Now there are serious doubts about what can be accomplished the rest of this Congress. Lou?
Mike, thank you very much. Mike Emanuel.